Paul?
Yep.
Oh, we're doing it out here so that we can,
So Paul is gonna come in by Zoom, and then he's gonna take over, and he's gonna screen share the budget up on to the screen here. Peter is with us, he is muted, but he is here. Hi, Peter.
is he taping this too? Are we taping this?
Yes, Scott is.
Okay.
So it's not being recorded on the Zoom platform, but it is here. Let me see if I have the speakers up. Peter, can you hear us? Let's see if Warren did this wrong with the volume, so. Well, I mean, we can start if you'd like, and we'll just wait for Paul Jansen to come. Like I said, Peter is here, I see him there. So what you were presented with was just our starting points for the 2023 budget. And what you'll see on the first page is the 2019 to 2021 average, and we use that to kind of establish a baseline as to what we believe certain line items should be, and where we think they're going to end by the end of the year. You'll see the next line is the 2022 January through August actual, so that's actually what we have expended in those line items, and then the line next to it is what we're projecting from year ends. What we use for projections of year end is we try to go out as far as we can, and we use the August treasurer's report to have 9 or 10 months in to see where we're gonna land up usually at the end of the year. So those numbers can still change. I worked with Peter and Sharon, our day-to-day treasurer in-house, and when there was questions about where we would land, look for them for some guidance. The next line is actually what our budgeted item was from January to December, and then you're gonna see the final line is a projected 2023 budget. And that was based upon what we see happening in the township over the next year, what I know will be expenses and potential revenues, and that's essentially where we're starting. So the first meeting, typically, we're just gonna review what I see, what we're projected. If there's numbers that are off than other ones, I'll kind of give you a description as to why it's like that. So the first line, that goes over our general fund revenue, so this is gonna cover all the funds that we have in the township. Real estate tax is gonna be going up just because of property values. And transfer taxes, delinquent taxes are about the same. That's 301,400. The transfer tax, sale of homes, it's pretty stable year to year. The earned income tax, it looks like we're already going to be projected to be about $40,000 over revenue budget. So we're gonna, so I think if we're gonna project out where we're gonna be, we're probably looking permits, they're all pretty much standard. They go up and down based upon rural lock, co-locks, kennels, cable franchise fees, which are all still holding out. Pretty standard. Fines and forfeits, we're actually gonna probably be at 22,000, it's showing 10 as estimated, and that's just based upon a civil litigation that we're currently in where the other party agreed to pay us several $1,000s in monthly installments over the next 17 months. So those payments started this month, so they're gonna be going all the way through the end of next year, so that $10,000 is actually probably gonna be a little bit higher than that. You'll see of notes, 341 on the second page, earnings and interest. For the general funds, typically we've been earning $3,000 on average. Our general fund typically holds between 2 and 3 million. This year, we believe we're gonna hit 15,000, and then you'll see next year, we're looking at earning $70,000. That's based upon our previous discussion about investing our excessive funds in place. We made the investment of $1.6 million this week. I don't know if I mentioned it, but within that 1 week, just sitting in a regular 2.2% account, we made $1,600 in interest in 7 days. So just on that $1 million interest, the current, it was 4.4 when we invested, so we're gonna make $44,000 just on our mutual fund, which has been sitting in our general fund and has not been spent since 2017. Essentially looked at it and sitting there when we transferred banks to our current Fulton Bank. We put some excessive money back then, and it has just been gaining interest over the course of several years. So we're looking at 70,000 just for the general funds. The state revenue is going to be pretty consistent. It might be a little bit lower next year, but not by much.
0355010 PURTA.
PURTA.
Yeah.
That's a government program. I'll get you more descriptive.
And we can keep going.
Okay.
Probably.
I'll get you, so anything, if you want, I can give you a more detailed breakdown of PURTA here.
How many liquor licenses now? One? Or
I think we have one,
Yeah.
and it's a $400 renewal fee. I think it's the old Maple Inn.
Yeah.
So previously, when I first started police work, liquor licenses were for the municipality. So it was based upon population. So if you had a small population, there might be one liquor license, and you could essentially bid it out to the highest bidder. And then over the last handful of years, they've permitted you to take it countywide, so now it's not locked down to a municipality. But the liquor license board doesn't often just make new licenses, so they're really bidding for them, and then this is just a renewal fee. So if we would see that number go up, that would mean we would be seeing additional liquor license coming into the township, which has not been occurring. 361, charges for services, that covers our reimbursement fees for subdivision of lands, developments, engineering fees that are reimbursable. That's essentially pass-through costs. For saldo reviews, some permitting reviews where we pay our engineering firm, and then we're reimbursed by an escrow account. Utilities reimbursable, that is the electricity that Twin Valley Building reimburses us for the usage of electricity in the park during their season. Hearing fees, again, there's going to be the fees coming back from the zoning hearing board, where the zoning hearing board applicant posts funds for that, including other associated fees. 362, public safety, it's kind of a misnomer. That's essentially where our permitting comes from. So that's are broken down into building permits, electrical permits. On average, they're $115,000 per the last 3 years. We are seeing 90,000
line 362450 use and occupancy, that's $100.
Correct. Use not, yeah. So we build the UNOs into our permit fee schedule. So one of the things that we will start doing here, based upon what we see, is reviewing what our fee schedule will be for the end of the year for permits.
Yeah.
We have the ability, we charge per square foot on commercial and some residential. We have the ability to knock that up a little bit. But the number of 90,000 is just based upon us reaching out to the subdevelopments currently in progress, which is Chestnut Ridge and Sweetwater Farms, and inquiring how many building permits they believe they're going to be pulling. And based upon that, a single permit between electrical and building is about $1,400 for one of the new construction. So we just kind of added those numbers up, and that's the line item that we're assuming we're gonna have as revenue.
And just, since we do have a healthy budget, would we be able to provide some easing on building permits for some people who want to do some work on their house?
So it's one of those concepts where, the permits benefits the applicant.
Right.
Currently, our building permit fees, that we have set are based upon what Technicon charges us for their review and everything.
I'm looking at it from the standpoint that if it's holding back some people in the municipality, that might be a deciding factor, an additional $70 or something.
It could be, but again, those are costs that typically aren't passed through to the community at large because that permit is benefiting the applicant, that single property owner.
Yeah,
Just for one, not naming a specific person, but we had that well issue. So that building permit of a few $100s cost us 20 hours, well, probably 10 hours in legal fees. And I guess my point, which I didn't finish, was the fee that Technicon charges us is if a permit is submitted to them that is complete. So if there's a denial letter and then there's additional work that comes with it, those costs are borne by the township and actually not passed back on to the applicant.
Yeah.
So, for example, this well, when he was going back and forth, that permit probably cost our township $10,000 to process.
Yeah.
So the ability of passing that on to the community, whether we have a budget that's healthy or not.
Yeah. It's just a long-term benefit for people to maintain their property. So if there's any way to sit.
So there's always an opportunity for someone to waive. Obviously, hopefully you've seen that. So when I came on board, we waived the fees for Twin Valley Little League to pull their shed that's in disrepair.
Could it be like a hardship, like if the person is, comes in and says, $70, that's a little too, steep.
Absolutely. If someone wants a waiver, right, they can, if anybody requests relief, that's not up to me.
Yeah.
To me, that's up to the board of supervisors. So like with Twin Valley Little League, if someone would like relief, they're welcome to come to a board meeting, or again, like you saw, I made that request.
I thought in the past we offered relief when we had like a disaster, like my barn burnt down, my house burnt down.
And one time there was a building where the roof collapsed.
Yeah.
We speed up the process, permanent, just to.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's exceptions for everything, but in general, I wouldn't recommend lowering building fees across the board because again, buildings are usually construction. Again, if there's a hardship claim, then obviously that's up to the board to decide to grant that, so.
So it can be done on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
Let's go.
Solid waste host municipality fees,
Sorry to interrupt.
oh, that's okay, hold on.
Can we talk about possibly,
Yep.
instead of like that
Hi,
permit
Paul.
cost, now
Can you not get it?
$10,000 and then we're charging them, we're not
You're in the budget,
necessarily charging.
you're on the budget
them.
workshop meeting.
you know, if they turn in a permit and it's 90%
Okay.
complete, we have to say, you have to do these 15 days.
It's meeting ID
Right.
7621.
I mean, I think it should be, we're not making money off of it, but at least charging for getting the paperwork right.
Okay.
Well, it could be a
Let's see
penalty
if I can
or
invite you.
add to, like there's your,
Well, just charge
I'm
them
gonna
what it
invite
costs
you
us,
right
not
now.
bill, right? I mean, that seems the most fair thing.
well, you just have to let people know upfront, right, you know, if.
All right, I'm just sending you one now.
You know,
From-
the, stated amount,
Mind
that
you.
you may be liable for the additional costs.
All right, so it should come
You
through
wanna
the
try to get
budget
the
workshop, and
complete
Peter's in here, I sent you that last week.
Because if we
so
have
he's
to
already-
review it and then turn it back to you and ask you for more information, it's possible you're gonna be due additional fees. And that seems reasonable.
Oh, we were a little lax in the past, there were, we.
Yes,
we had a
Zoom,
conference,
yeah.
and then we got reimbursed from some of the homeowners, so we did get.
Yeah, it's definitely a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, someone arranged.
So I'm not even sure where we're at on collections of past due permits.
Yeah, because
I
that was
know.
something Jackie Smith came up with at one point a few years back.
I don't remember who Jack is.
Sorry.
She used to work with her. She was the one I thought of that one and presented.
So, so there should be a link right in there to join.
So, at any rate, I think, because I think it's unfair for all the taxpayers to pay, you know, if somebody hands in,
Let's see.
you know, here's my low
Hasn't
tax
shown
roll,
up yet. Mhm.
you know,
There you are.
right, and then someone else hands in all the.
Let's make sure I can hear you first.
You know, you should contract to do it correctly, but there's no incentive to do it correctly.
Okay, all right.
Well, that was something that was brought up by the.
Right.
All right, just unmute yourself, because they're
We
muted.
didn't
Okay.
provide guidelines, and they were just ending, essentially,
All right.
drawing on a napkin type of thing, which was not the appropriate thing to do.
Hi, Paul.
Hello,
How are you?
Yeah, well,
excellent.
Sorry, Paul was on a Teams meeting, but that was my fault.
It's good to see you guys.
hey,
Nice to see you.
It's been a while.
that's.
So are you ready to jump in?
Yep, yep.
So let me start by saying that, since January, December last year, Warren and I have been talking on a fairly regular basis. It's been very positive and I really enjoyed the time. But in the last month, we've been meeting regularly to get the budget process in place. So I'm going to share my screen and then we'll walk through where we are with that. Can you see that?
No, let me make sure you can. Yeah, you can share, but we're not seeing it there.
All right, so let me try it again.
There you go. There you go.
Excellent. Okay, so this is a two-step process, and
You're
right
going
now,
forward for like.
You can sit in those chairs if you
Yeah.
like. Go ahead, Paul, sorry.
so this is a two-step process, and right now, all we're concentrating on is getting the documentation up to speed so that you have some insight into the 2023 budget. And so this is not a presentation of the budget, it is a presentation of your current status with projections of a current status 2023 budget. It's important to understand that. So as you can see here, one of the things that I always do when I do a budget is I always bring in what your fund balance is. What is the true condition of your fund? There's a lot of times municipalities, let's say we're looking here at a budget of $2.2 million in revenues. Municipalities might have $200,000 or $300,000 in reserves. That obviously is not your case here, but it's important for them to see that because they make decisions in a vacuum if they don't see it. So all the budgeting that I do always shows your current position of not only your general fund, but all of your funds. So Warren and I have spent last month looking back at your 19 to 21 budget. You see where my cursor is circulating?
Yeah.
So this is your average for those 3 years, 19, 20, 21. And then we looked at, this process started in August, we looked at your 2022 January and August budget so we could see that and see where you were. And then that helps us with this this column, which is projecting where we think you're gonna be on December 31st. So here you're looking at 2/3 of the year. August is 8 of 12. And here, we're looking at where your revenues are, and we analyzed every one of these accounts just to see whether in fact it was posted correctly, number one. And number two, where do we really think it's gonna end? So it's critical because your budget you adopted back in December of 2022 called for revenues of 2.3 million, but we're projecting your revenues actually at 2.456 million plus. So that's $100,000 higher. Your expenses, you adopted a budget of $1,527,000, but we're actually projecting only 1.8 million. Now, a big part of that is that you have ARP dollars that came in these revenue numbers. They're not going to be expended until next year. You've identified a number of capital projects and capital contributions, but if you don't see the fund balance, it really skews what you're looking at there. So now you can see that you're gonna be transferring in an additional $600,000, which is your ARP dollars. But then next year, your expenses are going to actually expend them out. You're not gonna have ARP dollars for revenue. So that brings your fund balance back into what would be a expected number at the end of 2023. So 3.8 million on an operating budget of around $2,500,000. Again, this contains that is 3 different one-time expenditures, and we'll go through those as we go down. So as I start to scroll this down, you can see that your average tax collection from 19 to 21 was 249. You were at 245 because most of your property taxes are collected in the first 6 months of the year during either the discount or the flat period. We're projecting 270. Your budget was 248. So this is a reflection, this 270 to 248 is a reflection of the construction that's occurring in the borough or in the township. So you have that many additional houses that are paying interims and full tax years because of the construction that's occurred in the last 2 years. This is a conservative number, 275, but I think you're going to see your growth is going to be probably closer to 280, but we don't want to take a gander on that because interest rates are going up so much right now for your real estate mortgage market that we're going to be more conservative than liberal, especially because you actually have a good fund balance, so you don't have to be careful. I mean, you don't have to be liberal with this. You can be conservative and still know that you're going to be okay. I forgot to say, ask questions as we go. I hate to get through this and then have you have a series of 10 questions and we're scrolling through to figure out where it is. This allows everybody to follow exactly where we are in the presentation, and then we can really look at what we're doing here. So, if anybody have any questions about property tax, that's a big part of your budget.
We did walk through the first several lines reflecting on page 1 and page 2 of the paper copy while we're waiting for you. So we may not have too many questions up front, but they'll be coming up shortly.
So, thank you, John. So you're looking at some fairly, so your real estate, your income tax is a tax on people who live in the township, where they're residents, and because your housing values are where they are, every house that you occupy is probably looking at paying the township at least $1,000, if not $2,000, based on their mortgage value and the amount of their value in the property before they buy it. So you're going to see it fairly significant. You budgeted 295 or 965, you're actually at $1,050,000. This is a conservative number. We're only figuring that you're going to have an extra 50,000, which of course includes the fact that you're going to have inflation this year. So wages are going up. But again, because your property, your general fund balance is so strong, there's no reason to budget crazy on this. So transfer tax likewise is budgeted pretty conservatively. So now we get into this is what you're talking about. These are the nuts and bolts. So it's important to look at where you were versus where you are now. And like fines and forfeits, we budgeted 7, you're at 12, we're budgeting 10.
We're actually gonna be at 22, Paul, because we had,
Oh, my God.
yeah, we're gonna be about 22 next year.
Is that your junkyard?
It is the junkyard incident going, yes.
So, for the board, just, you know, that's the magnitude of the discussions that Warren and I have been having. So, all right, so we want to budget 22 for next year?
Yes, sir.
So this is the best part about this whole process, because now it has been changed. And you'll see when we get to the end, it's also changed on your expenses and also on your fund balance. So here is, your residents need to know this. Warren has gone into an aggressive investment program. Because of your fund balances, he's put it into investments that are getting upwards of $3 to $3.5 million. So you budgeted 2,000. This is what you anticipated, and it's probably what you've been getting over the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years. He's going to get you at 15,000 in a year, but next year you're going to have $70,000. Just think of that in terms of property taxes, because that's free money for your residents. That's your manager aggressively investing your dollars where he's allowed to invest them. So he either has to have collateralized interest or he has to have in investment vehicles that are permitted by Pennsylvania. But you're looking at a significant amount of money because he's now aggressively investing your dollars. Even to the extent that you budgeted 2,000, and this year you're going to end up with at least 15,000, probably a little bit more, but we're conservative. So here's the big impact. You have ARPA funds from before plus this year. Next year, this is a 0. So you're going to have revenues that are $400,000 under. You have a little bit more this year because you got a tranche of the municipalities that didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't apply for the ARPA funds, and so ARPA then redistributed those to all municipalities. But you did receive 436,000 this year, and that's now when you're going to be in your fund balance. Any questions about that? Because that doesn't show up anymore. Okay, so again, we're just looking at your various accounts. Your state aid came in higher at 45,000. We're still budgeting conservatively for next year. Your average for the last 3 years was 19,000. So it's important that we look at your previous 3 years. I did an average here, but I looked at every one of your 3 years before I put this average together so you can follow it. Your foreign fire tax, that's a pass-through. You get it, and in September or October, and in 30 days you transfer it to your fire companies. And Warren has the number how that gets distributed. But that's what that tax, or that spending income is. So then we started looking at where you were, because your township was under development right now. You budgeted 42, you're actually going to hit 60, and we anticipate, because the first part of the year probably will have the same amount of engineering and legal fees associated with approvals, and we put the number back where we saw it end this year. So utilities, reimbursable, hearing fees, not anticipating tremendous hearing board fees there, but you're going to have some, so we have that budgeted for the revenue for applications. And of course, reproduction of records. For your average, $200, this year's budget, $300, you got $300, rather than budget $300 for service. Questions? One of the things that we're going to look at is this category right here. Building permits. You know, you budgeted 60 or 95,000, you only got 60 this year. We anticipate that you're going to have some fairly significant building next year. So we have it back at 90, but one of the things we're going to look at is what are your permit fees versus what are you actually expending on your inspections, because you have a third-party inspector. And that's something that Warren and I have just started, so we're going to be working on that. Electrical permits, the same thing. Budgeted 15, actually came in at 8, we're budgeting 10 next year. But I think you'll hit the 10, but we'll see where that process goes. Use and occupancy, UCC fees, your zoning and general permits, and then permit application fees. So those are all reflecting where you have been and where we anticipate you going. So again, this is not your budget. This is not being presented to you like it's the year-end 92 and the 2012 22, and then projected 23. This is giving you a insight into where you're going to be, so that you can start making budget decisions in the next 2 months before you adopt your budget in December. Your trash fees are going up every year. We're projecting 200,000 next year. That's because the landfill is in the township. We're not seeing park and recreation fees, although that may be that there's going to be something proposed in the budget. And then you make a number here.
Question about the trash fees.
Sure.
So I happened to have a conversation with, his name is Bob from the landfill, and he said that they're expanding the landfill on the northern side.
Correct, they're getting permits right now.
Yeah, okay, so then that's gonna increase that fee too, wouldn't it?
Correct. So as Paul has mentioned, we'll always want to be conservative, right? Because we have to have that balanced budget. We'd much rather see our revenue exceed than our expenses overtake revenue. So yes, it's a possibility. I just don't know how long that process is going to take.
Okay, I just,
So I have a question. Is the expansion of the landfill in Honeybrook, or is it in Lancaster or Burnsville?
it'd be Lancaster, I believe, because it'd be toward the north, toward Reading.
Yeah, so we might not be getting part of that host fees if it's in the Lancaster
So
side.
you're not going to get increased land fees, but if they get permitted, you're going to get longer fees.
Right.
Yeah, well, he said it would be, allow them to operate for the next 10 or 15 years, is what they thought.
So then we'll still get more host fees.
Yeah.
Yep,
I'm just curious how that all played together.
that's how it works.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that the municipality that's in Lancaster County with the expansion permit could negotiate for fees, but because you're still having trash come into Honeybrook Township, you're still going to get these fees that will be for a longer period of time to get the expansion.
Okay.
Okay? You have an interesting process here, right? And this is something that's new to me after 30 years of municipal management, but you actually charge your subdivisions for the cost of their hydrant rentals. And so you get revenue. Most municipalities, all they do is they pay their water provider to do hydrant rentals. Does everybody know what a hydrant rental fee is? I'll just explain it so everybody understands. You have a water system, and on that water system, you have hydrants. And every one of those hydrants is a dead-end water line. So until they open that water line up, the water just stagnates in there. So they're supposed to open them up once a year, if not twice a year. And so there's a fee associated with the labor that goes into that, and also the amount of water that's lost because they drain the line. So that's what the hydrant rentals are. Now, in your case, you pay a much higher hydrant rental cost, but you get it recovered because these are happening in private neighborhoods where the lines are dedicated. So it's an interesting process. I'm sure for one, we run up the date on it, so that's really
The
great.
question, does that apply to all the hydrants, do we know, or is it just the ones in Penn?
It's the ones that serve subdivisions. So if there's,
Because the one in Penwood, we don't do the work, that's another municipality.
correct, that's only if we get billed. So we have an overlay of how far those hydrants serve, and then the communities within that service area get, their association gets the bill for the reimbursable cost.
So this is money in, money out. I mean, you get a bill,
Yeah,
you pay a bill, and then you bill you bill the homeowner association, they pay. So, it's a projection based on the fact that you're gonna be taking additional rentals in some of the subdivisions, and so you'll end up getting some of that recovered also. Miscellaneous revenue is always funny money. It's just stuff that comes in that doesn't fit any of these other accounts, so we kind of put a placeholder in there with $1,000. This year you didn't want it, you're going around, it's nothing that is, you have to be concerned about, it's just so much more money. You have a contribution, a little tax that in from your senior housing.
That's from Telhi, yes.
Yeah, so as long as that agreement is in place, it's another place where you'll keep getting those revenues. I would assume they're just gonna continue to do that.
They're gonna be increasing over the next handful of years, potentially, so I have that fee rate increase, so if it looks like it's gonna go that way, we can put that into our 5-year build out.
You're gonna adjust it, absolutely. Excellent. So right now, your revenues for last year were $2,400,000. you may budget 2,351,000. Your actual revenues projected for 23 are 2,300,000. Again, that's because you're not getting your ARPA dollars next year. So it's interesting that number isn't going down all that much, but most of it is because your EIT is increasing, your transfer taxes are staying solid, and your property taxes are going up. So you've been able to blunt the loss of revenue pretty well because of that. The other side of this is that you take your reserves, and as we showed up above, you haven't spent the money, so it's going into your reserves, and now it's there, you can spend it in 2023 and not negatively impact. So now we're at the expense side. So revenues are all 300, expenses are 400. So we can flow down this line, but we look at the various accounts. Payroll for elected officials doesn't change. Unless you do that before, that's a reminder. If you want to change your pay schedule, if you haven't maxed out on second class code, you have to do that before February 12th. So you have to do that January next year in order to change your fee for 2024. It can't be in place until any elected official has been re-elected, put into office, or elected into office, and they become eligible for the increased rate. Everybody understand that?
Can you give that one more time?
Okay, so second class code allows you to pay your elected officials up to a certain amount.
Yeah, it's 2,500.
Okay, so 2,500 is a case that doesn't matter, you can't increase. Now, your population may shift you into a larger percent, a larger number, that maybe 2,800 or 2,900 you're allowed to pay.
Yeah, that's why we're up to 10,000. We're at 8,000 right now. So that's in that range right now.
So you're locked in, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just for the future, for anybody who's in office now, you can't raise your rate until you run for election, and you have to do that before petitions are filed. So it's always before the February petition date of the year before the election, and then when that takes hold, the person who was elected can get that money, but it doesn't affect everybody until everybody runs for re-election.
Yeah.
Okay? Auditing, this year's treasurer's salary with you're at 66,595 is the projected amount for next year. Your services, your auditing services are based on what we anticipate you're going to be charged for your audit. And of course, we have an allowance for your treasurer.
This question, legal, this is just for solicitor, it's not for the zoning, that's a separate.
We're just at auditing right now.
Yeah.
They break out.
This is all
zoning-
auditing.
Yeah, so solicitor and zoning hearing board solicitor are two separate line items.
Yeah,
And they're coming down low.
yeah.
So we have your tax collection expense, that's what your tax collector charges the township for the expenses that they have in order to collect the taxes.
That'd be what Keystone.
Keystone collection.
Yep. Legal, this is your general legal, so this is your solicitor here. You are progressing at 58,000 this year, we put 60 in. It's all a matter of what comes up that you need to ask solicitor support on, but it's a pretty comfortable number. And so we're shifting the other way now. We're trying to make your expenses be realistic plus versus your revenues being realistic minus, so that you have a good mix. And again, you have a good fund balance, so it's not really an issue. But 60 is what we're projecting, and we'll look at the balance of this year to know whether it should be 58 or it should be 62 or 70. And of course, you have another 2 months where emerging legal issues could be coming in, so you want to adjust your budget accordingly. You have $2,000 for work that your solicitor does that you're allowed to bill for and get reimbursed. So this is actually not 60, but it would be 58 back at the curve. And then you have special legal, which is something that comes up that you need to have special counsel for, not your township solicitor. Okay, so now we're into your administrative expenses, and this is your salary for your staff and payroll taxes. You come down to health insurance. You budgeted 44, but because your manager isn't receiving benefits, you're you're back into saving money on that issue. So that's a impact of Warren's previous employment allows him not to have to charge the work of the township for health insurance.
Just for your knowledge, it's saving about $26,000 a year. Not
Huge.
the township policy,
For health insurance.
for my family health insurance. yes.
Because the township policy is we cover you, your wife and kids. are covered.
Correct, so I have post-retirement benefits as a police officer, so it covers my spouse and I, we pay for them. The benefit my wife receives as a township supervisor in Euclid is they're permitted to be on the township health plan. So my children are covered, and my wife is in her first year of 6 years. So at some point down the road, if my wife is no longer a solicitor, my ask would just be to pay the gap of like $600 a month, so I could stay on Euclid's policy and just pay the difference, which is about $300 per month per kid, but that's 6 years out. So right now, I'm saving you $26,000 per year.
Okay.
So these are all projected costs, and they're pretty consistent, and then we get down to the township manager's salary, and this is a placeholder. Obviously, the board of supervisors have to determine what the salary is gonna be, but it's a placeholder at $100,000. That will be refined as you go through the budget process. So now we're into your general government, and all of these accounts add up to $102,000. So it's, there's a lot of different parts of this. They're all placeholders. As you go through it, you'll make your decisions the way you want to do. Your biggest one right here is this is the first of the contributions that you're going to be making as a result of ARPA last year. So Warren can explain the different contributions you're making, but it's listed at $44,000. It's a one-time, or I think the one contribution is a one-time expense.
So it's
and then it'll sell back.
So this is the 24-month donation to the Huntingburg Food Bank at $3,500 a month. So part of it was this current year, some will be next year, and then some, a few months will be in 2024. So that's why the number typically is 28, but it's 44. That's making that difference up there.
But it's
So in 21, you were at 14. In the previous 3 years, you were at 28. And then we're projecting 28 for this year, 2,800 versus 28,000. And then probably next year, you'll come back in probably closer to $4,000 or $5,000. Because you have a couple more months of the food bank, and then you go back to your normal contributions. Again, it's by ARP.
Can you explain that 406-320 communication expense? What is communication, is that?
So that's our internet and phone service. So it spiked a little bit this year because we moved from having a traditional landline
Yeah,
service to moving to our VoIP, which is the Zoom platform. So
yeah.
we unfortunately had to purchase a year in advance while still paying off our Verizon bill, which was about $400 a month. So it's gonna be lower. Next year, it's a little bit higher than budgeted this year just because we had to make that shift.
Yeah.
So that's internet, phone service, Zoom room, all the associated items that just go for the communications. And that's on the administrative side, not the public works side.
So I'm hovering over this 5,200 because that was your average for 19, 20, and 21. You spiked up a little bit to 7,000 this year, but now you're settling down to 3,700. You're already saving next year the money you spent this year going in, and now this number is going to be $1,500 less going forward. It's a nice savings. Very good recommendation. Okay, vehicle expense. Now you have a vehicle for your administration, so we budgeted for the costs associated with that. And that's built into your budget now, so you don't have surprises next year that don't happen. So we're in good shape there. Advertising, that's what you pay for your legal ads and any other ads you have to do. So it's your budget, you have to advertise your budget every year. You also have to advertise your tax rate. So that's what all those expenses are. We're just anticipating you're going to return more to a normal expense next year than you had this year.
And just as a verification, it costs about, $300 to advertise any meeting that we would possibly
Yeah.
have, any meeting at all?
So anything that's gonna be involving the supervisors or our standard, we have to post legally in the daily local. Now, we do a bulk post in January, we can announce all the meetings for the rest of the year, so we're paying a single fee. But anytime we have any specialty meetings, if we have to, yeah, zoning hearing boards, workshops, that to stay clear of the zoning, the sunshine law, we have to legally advertise, we get a certificate, we get a notarization that it has been legally, posted, right, so those things, those bills are $200-300 every single time we have to post for you.
And just to let you know that we have to go with the daily local because it's gotta be a daily paper.
Of circulation, that's paid.
the state limit.
That is it's a paid circulation.
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
Oh, you could go to the Inquirer and pay like 5 times more.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a choice.
Yeah.
That's not a choice, but it's not the only choice you have, so anyway. Computer services, I understand this across the board. It doesn't matter, it is costing more money to maintain your networks. The other side of it is your networks are allowing you to keep your personnel costs down. So, that's a big deal, but, Warren's done a lot of work to make sure that you're as tight as you can on this budget, so that's a good thing. All right, so now we get into your general engineering. So this is what you pay your engineer to do is work for the township in general. This isn't specific work, although you can make a policy decision that you're gonna pay for everything out of this account. But we're projecting 85,000 next year because of the projects that you have, the issues you got, basically. Again, it's to allow for you to know that you have enough money set aside in case something you need it for.
So hang on, that would be like if Mike would engineer a stormwater project that we would have as a township? Or
Yeah.
some type of road maintenance as we would have as a
Yeah.
township?
Yep, bridge, if you have to analyze any bridges, see if they're going to be sound, all of that work. If that's your general engineering, that's not sell, that's not your subdivision land on or your application for zoning work. This is just your general engineering.
Okay.
537 is your on-lot or your sanitary sewer planning system. So it's your collection system and also where you have your on-lot systems and it's projecting where your growth is going to be, your township, how you're going to plan for. And that update is due next year, so you have 5,000 budget for that. MS4, burn that in your warnings, that's your stormwater, environmental work. And we budgeted 9,500 for that because you have to do all kinds of reporting, your permit, and then all of the documentation you have that you are in fact in compliance with your stormwater system.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have one question about the engineering piece with the 537. So we had Fred Ebert updating our 537, and then we had to do that on-lot septic. We're gonna have to, be on top of our on-lot septic systems and keep track of that, what area of the township. So is that in that fee, or is that an administration fee?
So the 537 is for the update fee, and we were prepared to submit this year, but then the DEP had some concerns with what the sewer authority was gonna do for upgrades. So we're in this holding pattern where they're reviewing.
It's still in a holding pattern.
It's still in a holding pattern, so just to be safe, we had budgeted to close it out this year. It doesn't look like we're gonna get back in front of the DEP. And based upon the revisions to us, we're gonna have to pay additional storm, fees. So that 537 is just to update the act, not enforcement. It's just to actually make sure that,
Okay.
right?
So your engineering fees, so your engineer will be charging you, but you'll be able to turn around and get reimbursement for their work. And again, we're allowing for, it's really a pass-through, so we're just allowing for enough money there to account for it, right?
Paul,
Before you did 3 years or 43,000.
Hey, Paul, Peter has a statement.
just a quick question, and Paul, very nice presentation and great job on the budget.
Oh, it gets better.
Does it
Oh, yeah.
get more fun? What I'm normally seeing in other budgets is that that $40,000 engineering reimbursement matches the income side.
Right.
So, I think I printed off the budget earlier, and I'm looking at a $60,000 income. And I was wondering if that should be, considered, knocked down a little bit.
So I believe the revenue side also includes your, a certain amount of fees that are reimbursed out of your planning and subdivision process. This is strictly the fees for your engineering in general.
Gotcha. So so you're looking at maybe another $20,000 worth of, because
The fee, yep. And again, this is just a planning document. This is not the final document. So as we move further into the year, we'll tie it all out. Your previous 3 years, you averaged 43,000. Last year, you had $1,409 return from the previous year. And then you have nothing this year that you actually expended. We anticipate you're going to have expenses next year. And again, it's a placeholder. We can refine this number as we get between now and the end of December.
yeah, I'm just thinking theoretical, that's all.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right.
And
And
Peter,
that's where we are for the next 60 days.
Peter, I just wanted to ask you, are you referring to lines 361.320, engineering?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, I've seen those as being the same.
Yeah.
So actually, it probably should be theoretically 42,000, because you have 2,000 in being reimbursable,
Yeah.
right? And then you got 3,000 in engineering, so I'm just throwing that out as
So you believe me that this number should be 42,000?
no, I think the income should be 42,000,
Okay. And right now, what is it?
60.
Okay, let's go back and tie that together and I'll highlight it so we can go back and revisit it.
Yeah, 361, 320.
So let's just make that match and make sure that we have that projected correct.
So that 361, 320, I actually talked to Sharon about, Peter, because currently that's engineering and legal combined, and we're gonna be splitting them out separately. So that's why that number is 60, while you're seeing the engineering at 20. But I do see your point that we only have 2,000 listed otherwhere for the reimbursable
So I would make it 42.
42. Okay,
All right, we're ready so we can revisit it.
sure.
Yeah, it's just a nit, it's not gonna.
Well, no,
Make that pressure, but it is sort of like tying out, the components.
no, that's what we're looking for.
Do you have a hard stop at 7 o'clock?
No, you can keep going. We don't.
Okay, excellent, all right. So now this is your building maintenance, this is your budget for utilities and things that are gonna be associated with your building itself. And a lot of them are very historical, and so you can see we're budgeting an extra $4,100. I guess it's mostly associated with, refuse service, your refuse cost is going up.
And that's because we added a recycling dumpster both at the township and at the parks.
There it is, okay?
So that's the change. That's $250 a month per dumpster.
And in that building maintenance section for the carpeting in this floor, it's something that we should be budgeting at some point for replacement.
So that's maintenance. That might come out of capital. But again, yeah, this is the purpose of this. If you think that we should be looking at it, because this building was, what, 2009?
About that time. Yeah.
So we're looking at the point where we have to start forecasting, more capital replacements of carpets, roofs, right, windows, casings.
So capital one is a two-part process.
Yeah.
So you've done well, 13 years out of a carpet in a commercial environment. So it's two parts. It's the length of service versus the amount of money. So if you have a capital expense for something you're going to buy that's going to last 50 years and it's $2,000, you do it out of your operating budget. And if you have something that's going to be 15 years and it's $30,000, you might want to consider pushing it into your capital budget and budgeting.
So do you want us to look into,
Yeah, I consider, if you look at, there's, some of those tiles were replaced and, I don't know what kind of shape it's in. We had a discussion last year, 2 years ago, on potential.
so I'll grab some quotes and then I'll work with Paul and we'll see if it fits in our budget, and if not, I think,
Yeah.
as
Do
Paul
we have any
said,
spare carpet tiles somewhere?
I'm
like
sure we
in the
do.
basement or something?
I'm sure we do, but at some point it's gonna be a replacement.
Yeah.
So we'll look into it, again, I can get some numbers,
Yeah.
and then based upon the numbers, Paul and I will see whether, again, it's probably gonna come out of capital, Paul, if we're gonna be replacing carpet.
I'm saying decision for the board.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's, so if you're buying a ladder truck, that's a capital expense.
Right.
If you're buying carpet, that's a policy decision.
Okay,
So it makes it easy. So, go either way.
I'll get some numbers and we'll figure it out with the board.
Yep. So you had 120,000 budgeted this year for your fire contribution. It didn't get done, so that's a zero. So now we have 120 this year, and then there's also an additional request for EMS, I believe. Is that correct? Or,
So the 120 was what we agreed to give the ambulance for our ARPA funds. They asked that we just move it forward to next year. The extra 20,000 is the Twin Valley Little League, or Twin Valley Fire Company, I'm sorry, when I met with them for their budget discussion, they have a fire truck they want to purchase, and it's fast approaching 2 million.
Yeah.
We only contribute in EIT about 2,000, because they only cover maybe 60 homes in our jurisdiction. I think giving them $20,000 to go towards their fire truck, because they're not our primary, but obviously, they're still in our first response unit, so if we get an active building fire, we're getting their ladder truck, so, if we have the funds, I think that's a worthy contribution, even though they're not our primary. So,
so this is, you don't see many of these in this budget, but because it was such a significant amount, I decided to put it as an explanation. So you see the 120 for EMS, and 20 for the Twin Valley Fire Department.
Yeah.
Next, then I'll go away and we'll eliminate that line. So this is the foreign fire insurance tax. Does everybody know what foreign fire insurance tax is? How many people do?
Don't remember.
So, Pennsylvania decided years and years ago that they would tax fire insurance companies that were not domiciled in Pennsylvania for their fire tax. And so they collect all of that money, and then they distribute it to each of the municipalities, and you're free to distribute back all of it. You have to distribute 100% of it to whatever fire companies you want to. So you have a $43,000 income, and you also have $43,000 expense. It's a pass-through. So this number could be 43.5. It doesn't matter because then your distribution is going to be 43.5. Okay? All right, so we have 85,000 here for building permits, and I have that in red because it's a soft number right now. We're gonna look at it as we go into the next 2 months and kind of look at where we are. The other thing is, Warren and I are gonna look at where your revenues are versus your expenses to make sure, one of the things I do as part of my contract is to analyze where your revenues are versus your expenses to make sure that you're being properly compensated for the work you're doing. And it can be really an interesting process. You take a $50 permit fee for a zoning permit, but your cost is more like $75 to $80, and that's where we have to step in and make recommendations of where your fee should be. So that's a red number because we're not sure where it needs to be. It was budgeted 130, and actually is 60,000. You can see in the past it's been 108,000 for the past 3 years, and then last year was only 47,000. So we have it in red, we're gonna look at it for the next 2 months. That's where we are as far as the placeholder goes. Same thing as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
what's that?
There's 2 people.
Well, they can come in.
Yeah.
Okay, George, okay.
Yeah. One is Garrett.
Okay, yeah, they're welcome, unless you feel that we should move on quickly, I mean, it's a workshop meeting, we're just going over,
Yeah.
so I think this is,
It's helpful, I think.
yeah, and Steve Curran is,
Yeah.
speak at we're still working on our budget if you have some time there.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. All right.
So now we're into your planning and zoning area, and this is, these are all the things that are associated. So you have $30,000 for your zoning officer. You have $25,000 for your zoning hearing board expenses. And that's what we're projecting for 23. We'll look at these as we go forward. You can see that your expenses are above your budget in one area, lower in others, and so we're just gonna kind of study this for the next few months. These are placeholder accounts right now. Animal control, again, that's Warren's experience as to what we're seeing. Used to be 14,000, in 21 it was only 68.93. It's gonna be 12,000 this year, we'll do 12,000 in replacement. Warren, this is just the refuse collection for the township building, correct? Is 2250?
2250, let's see. That's for the sanitation, yep.
Yep. So that's just it's a placeholder, but we'll look at what the expenses are. But I think 2250 is a solid.
Yeah, and that's on the public works side, just because they house both of our dumpsters.
Yeah.
So there's no refuse collection for the township side. And again, that's us adding recycled dumpster to a regular dumpster, which doubles our cost.
My grandson is beside me here on a phone saying hi to me, so I just have to wait till. He said, love you, bud. Sorry about that. All right. All right, sorry about that. So now we're into the Public Works Department. We projected the salary increase that is, again, a placeholder, but we projected where it is. Your payroll taxes, the same thing. Uniform, all of these are your costs associated. This is an allowance for healthcare. We don't know what that number is yet, but we're gonna have it by the time we adopt the budget. We budgeted 19,000 for workers' comp. It's actually gonna come in around 80. We're putting it in 10 again as a placeholder. This could be 200, it could be 7,500. We don't know until the workers' comp carrier gives us the number, but at this point, they're placeholders. Same thing with the pension. Budgeted at 30, actually it's gonna be 26 this year. We have it budgeted at 29. So, the thing you can count on is at least when we look at the overall 23 budget, you've got placeholders for everything. This your operational dollars, diesel fuel, big increase. And we see it settling down this year, but diesel fuel is a lot more expensive. 21 paying 14,000. Next year, or this year, we're looking at 22. We have the budget at 24, maybe a little bit less. We'll look at that as we get closer to December. Heating, again, same thing. It's just like diesel fuel. It's just a grade above diesel fuel. So that's what you're dealing with there with the 4,700. Operating supplies, your average was 7,000 last year, was 1,100. This year it's up to 16,000. We have a budget of 15,000. We're really adjusted if needed. So the rest of these are just regular operational accounts. So communications, I guess, are your radio expense for what you have, and of course your utilities and unfortunately. Snow and ice, this is a big one. This is one that you want to make sure you have enough on, because if we have a bad winter, this number could actually end up being $40,000. So you look at it and you say the average for the last 3 years was 12, last year was 12.8, we have 20 in there. If you end up doing better, great, but you're in an area where this could be $60,000, $45,000, based on how bad the winter is. So we have a placeholder that's above what you would expect it to be, but it also could be substantially less than what it ends up being. So, anybody have questions about that? That's a big number. That's a number that you gotta really be careful with. You don't have a lot of traffic control devices, but you have a budget to maintain them. You didn't spend anything this year. We have 1,000 as a placeholder for next year. You spent 400 this year on control services and maintenance. We have 500 next year for that.
Yeah, question on traffic control supplies and what would that include?
That would be the actual parts and stuff that you put in for traffic lights. And also, I think your traffic signs are in there too.
Yeah, the stop signs, the speed limit signs, cones,
That's all traffic
thinning
control.
cones, flags, flagger training.
Okay.
So here's your second big adjustment. You had 250,000 budgeted for stormwater projects, you actually spent 50, but 200 of this is shifting from this year for ARPA to next year. Again, this is gonna be adjusted after this year because you're sinking money into a big project because of the ARPA funds.
And this is gonna be the stormwater project along Beaver Dam Road and then the secondary one on Simply Road. We actually have to, we're waiting for a DEP permit for a bog turtle for Simply Road.
I'm getting tired of hearing about bog turtles.
Yeah, you and I.
They've been a huge part of my career, and I don't remember the last time that bog turtle was essential to anything. But I appreciate trying to save the species. I just think it's thriving right now. Anyway, okay, so enough editorial on that. So we now have tools and equipment, parts and supplies, and then we have repairs by your companies that make sure that your tools and equipment stay operating. And again, this kind of reflects your existing experience, but for years prior, you averaged 17,000, so we bumped it up a little bit. Again, it's a placeholder, we'll refine it as we get closer to the summer. Repairs to maintenance of roads and bridges. You know, this is where you're getting the stuff that you do to maintain your roads. And 30,000 was your 3-year average. Last year was 22. We had it back at $30,000. And then other services and charges, your average was 8,000, but you're down to 975. Last year, you're only going to finish at 5, so you have 5,500 for next year. Again, it's kind of something we'll just revise as we get closer to December, but they're placeholders that really are safe placeholders for you. Equipment rental, this is where your public works department needs equipment to do jobs that they're doing. And so you didn't spend anything last year in 21, but you had 4,300 for your average for the previous 3 years. So we're putting 4,000 for a placeholder. Some of that could be impacted by the equipment that's being projected to be purchased next year, but it may be when you get it versus when you have to rent equipment to overcome that. You're in your budget, there's money for a skid steer and equipment with that, and that's probably a big part of what you have to rent it. And so you won't have to rent that anymore, which also is a big thing because it'll save you money in that area. Cemetery lawn care, you guys know that better than me.
Yeah, we have an old cemetery that whoever owned it, it's not around anymore, so we have to take care of it, mow it.
Isn't that amazing? They just abandon it and it goes to the municipality. It happens all over the country.
Yeah.
Okay, so recreation programming, you budgeted this year, you haven't budgeted for the last 4 years. It's not in there now. If you guys believe you're gonna have recreation programming, you can put it in, but right now it's at 0. So that's one of those things that you wanna look at and decide if you wanna do, or you just wanna let it go and wait for the future for when you actually wanna do actual programming.
So that was our summer camp, and the person who had done it for years no longer does it, and we made some inquiries, and there's just 0 interest without a significant investment in administrative staff trying to put it all together, so. We didn't have anybody last year or the year before. COVID shut it down, and there's little interest in the people that we've reached out to actually put on a program, so. Unless the board feels differently, and again, this is something we'll discuss over the next 2 months.
Okay.
Okay?
So this is the actual maintenance of your parks, and it's placeholders, but it's pretty consistent with where you were. You stepped up to 25,000 this year for maintenance and for services that were provided in the parks and also for utilities, and it's consistent with this year. A little bit more for materials and supplies, but again, placeholders. This is your final big contribution from your ARPA funds. It's your library capital contribution. You make a $20,000 contribution to your library, and next year is going to be a $93,000 capital construction contribution, and then it'll go away the following year.
And that's for the Keystone grant that we agreed to do, the matching portion to get them the 50% match to get the state funding.
Yep.
And that application is due at the end of this month, so I'm working with Patchy from the elaborating it on.
So this is one of those accounts that is locked in. This is actually what your bond principal is and actually what your bond interest is. What you'll see fun is that we have that built into the 5-year budget. I'll get to that after we're closed. So this is not funny money, this is actually locked in. This is what you have to pay. Your pension administration plan, that's a pretty consistent dollar, and your workers' comp administration. Those are costs that are kind of locked in. So, you have or remind me, what is the insurance expense of 42,000?
That's, was it the disability or something, or what company?
It's a consistent number.
Yeah, it's,
I'm drawing a blank on what we have.
Is that your general liability?
yeah, that's our general liability, that's what we pay for, yeah, sorry, thank you, Peter. That's what we pay for coverage for every single item under the township's ownership. So buildings, vehicles.
Here, I hate to put you on the spot. What is your role in the township? Because you know an awful lot about it.
He's our treasurer.
I love it. Okay.
Sorry, Paul, you
I have
really.
never seen. I heard about you, treasurer. I've never seen it. So Peter, I'm really happy. You really are in line with what we're doing. So that's great. I'm very happy to see that.
Thank you.
Outstanding. All right.
They were-
Sorry. So we're at the end of the budget, and so our total expenses are $2,522,000, which means you're gonna have a deficit of 239, and people look back and go, oh my God, we have a deficit. But remember that a lot of that is eaten up by your fund balance from this year because of ARPA funds. So you have deferred expenses into this year, 2023, from 2022. So while it looks like it's topped at 239, you have actually far exceeded your budget estimate at 619,000, so you're in good shape. So now we go back up, and I just want to take a moment, because this is where it gets so critical to look at the very top of this budget project, because now you can see where your fund balance is. So you are, in 2022 projected, you're turning over an additional $1,000,008, $1,000,008 expenses, but your fund balance is actually $4,051,000, which you were projected with your budget adoption of $3,200,000. So you're $800,000 up. And so when you come into a deficit here, you have the money there in your fund balance. And it's not ongoing expenses, it's one-time charges. So now we get to have some fun. I'm just gonna go through and just show you, we're not gonna go through line item by line item, but I wanna show you that every one of your funds is now completely separated. The biggest one that we have to work on is the capital. Of course, that's the issue of, the board you have to decide as board of supervisors what hits your capital. But here we are, we're into your fund balance for recreation. Okay, so fire protection fund, that's your 03 account. I have assigned fund numbers with more in each of these, and you can see your fund balance for each of them. We're not gonna go through line item by line item. I wanna show you that as you get into your actual analysis of the 23 budget, you have an EMS fund, and it's identified and segregated. You have a capital reserve fund. This is the account that at the end of 22, we estimate that you're gonna have $849,000 out of the budget, but actually you're gonna have 917,000 projected year end. So now you can see that there's nothing in the 23 budget. You guys see where my cursor is?
Yeah.
If you want to be able to identify what your capital projects are, we start filling that in. So we get past that, we're at fire capital, because you're now setting aside funds for your ladder truck that's coming. And so now you have a separate fund to handle that. This is your big account, land press. You have EIT money that goes in there, plus, look at this. This is your interest earnings based on what your budget was in 2022, $600, At the end of, at the end of 2022, we anticipate $600. Next year, because of what Warren is doing with investing dollars, there's gonna be $75,000 of free money. That's not tax dollars, that's taking your principal and investing it. Huge, huge asset for the township that Warren is doing an aggressive investment program there. You also were at $1,000 in your budget, now next year you're gonna get 10,000. So your total interest for your land press is $85,000. So we have land press fully budgeted, we have your recreation budget fully budgeted. That's something that you have to look at, because you're putting away funds to build parks. So you wanna kind of look into the future and see what that actually looks like. And then, of course, when you build a park, you have to build maintenance for the park. So you have a budget, and you have a line item there. This is a great account, your liquid fuels, my God, you have serious money there. That's your maintenance of your roads in the township. And so you, at the end of the year, next year, you're budgeting $241,000, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're buying two major pieces of equipment. And let me see where I can find that, right here, where do we, oh, you have your road program, and as we go forward, you'll see that's budgeted every year. Warren, where do we have the equipment? Oh, here it is, right here. This is an $80,000 one-year purchase, and it's for your F600.
Yeah, the chassis for the F600, and then we're gonna buy the dump out of the capital reserve. And then we're gonna plan, if the board would like, to buy the skid steer out of capital.
So your annual revenue, your allocation from PennDOT is around $300,000. You see it right here. So we're leaving $241,000 in there, so you have a nice reserve. But you can tell your residents, you're budgeting $150,000 on liquid fuels to do road projects, on top of what you have in the general fund for road projects. Okay, so is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
This is where it gets fun, and I think Peter's probably gonna enjoy this also. So, hold on, just a couple minutes. Just hold on a second and let me bring this up. Let me go one file up. Sorry about that. Give me a second here, I'm working through it. For some reason. Oh, here we are, it's further down. Here we are. Now you get to have some fun. So here is your 5-year budget. So let me shift this over. And so as we get to the end of this year's budget, we're gonna have your 23 budget. We're gonna project all of your expenses, all of your revenues, and then we're gonna see what happens with your financials for each fund. So if you make a decision you wanna hire a public works guy, first of all, we're gonna have a cost allocation plan. It tells you what the actual cost of an additional person is, and then you can now project it over a 5-year period. So you're not looking at it and saying, well, geez, the public works guy is $50,000 in salary. You're looking at it and saying, oh, the public works guy is $93,000 in total cost. And let's look at what happens to our 5-year budget. So as you can see here, this takes you out to 2027, and then not only is it your general fund, and we projected that out, this is where, so Peter, I think you should be smiling right now. You're looking at long-term projections of what happens. We're looking at your fire protection fund. We're going to blow that out for an extra 5 years. All of these funds will be filled out for exactly what happens to them. We are in the general fund for out of 5 years, but as Warren and I go through the next 2 weeks, we're going to be filling out all these other funds. So by the time we get to October 1st, November 1st, which is beginning of your budget season, you're going to have a real look into the future, not just for 2023, but for 2023 through 2027. Any questions?
No, I think you overwhelmed us with knowledge.
Warren, you and I have been working this, I think Peter's gonna love this, because he's gonna look at it and go, okay, now I can see where we're going, and I
Absolutely.
can make some projections for where we are financially healthy. But you can see, just right here, 24, 25, 26, your reserves are filling. Now, that means that you can commit more money in your operating budget to handle issues that you have. But it also means that you're in very solid financial position. And that's gonna make Peter smile. So that's where we are. And we're not done, but I'm telling you, you have a roadmap for 23. And when Warren makes the presentation in November, you're gonna have a real solid look into the future of Huntley Brook and where you wanna be.
I appreciate it.
Questions?
No, I appreciate your insight, thank you.
But it's good catching up with you guys, it really is. You know, we spent a lot of time at the end of 2021, and it's nice to see you guys and to spend time with you, so, and I am really enjoying my time with Warren, so, that's where we are, and you'll see me more in the next few months, but that's where we are.
Thank you for your time, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
All right, Peter, we'll be in touch, and we're gonna move on to our next meeting.
Outstanding, thanks a lot, all right,
Good, Joe.
very good,
All right, have a good night, all.
all right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone? Okay.
Let me let Mike in. Mike is going to be remote,
Yeah.
so he is. That is. You're welcome to start, and I can bring in Mike as he is joining. There he is.
I want to welcome everybody to the October 5th Huntington Township Supervisors Workshop meeting. Call the meeting to order. Is there any announcements?
Not that I'm aware of, and there's nobody participating besides Mike Reimer on Zoom as the engineer, which I have already on my screen up here.
Okay. So then we'll move on to open forum for anybody attending in person for any items on the agenda.
Good evening, Mike.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi,
Good evening.
So we'll move on to business. First is Steve Kern from Honeybrook Fire Department.
How you doing? I'll just pass this out. This is a 20-year replacement plan that I think Tracy and John have seen this already. This is, I think this is from 2019. Do you want me to speak to Mike?
No, however you'd like to speak.
I just wanted to come down here and inform the township that we're getting ready to replace an engine.
Yeah.
It's a 2004. We have a 20-year replacement cycle. If we were to order today, we'd probably get it spring of 25. And we're looking anywhere between 900 and 950,000. So when the time comes, we won't be asking for capital fire funds from the township for assistance, just like we did with the tanker we bought. I just wanted to come down here and let you know that's what we have
Good.
coming up, and
Yeah.
we'll keep you informed as the process goes along.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, if you want to work with me, again, over the next couple of weeks, as you can see, we're building out our 5-year budget, so that includes the fire capital project. So if you want to sit down with myself and even Paul, you know, we can project out what we need to be saving to make sure that we can get you funded appropriately.
Okay, I don't know, you go like 3:30 usually?
I will meet you whenever you want.
Okay.
Our office is 9 to 3, I work whenever. So I know most people work regular jobs, so I will come in nights, weekends, weeknights.
I'm usually home by 3 o'clock,
Okay.
so.
So please don't think you have to meet me based upon the business schedule. I want to make sure that you take care of yourself, and I want to make sure that, I'm here most months, probably 3 or 4 times a month until about 10 o'clock at night. So happy to meet you when it works for you.
Yeah, I'll just give you a call and set something up.
Perfect, and we'll get you all set up.
Do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, what are you finding that what would this vehicle have cost 3 or 4 years ago before?
Well, when we first made this, we were probably projecting around 800,000.
Okay,
The tanker we bought, that we received last year, we ordered it back in 2020. That was 847,000. And that truck is much larger than the one we're going to be getting.
okay.
So it's just.
So do you think the 950 is going to go up by the time you guys set the order,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we'll be around there. I'm hoping it's less.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to say. We met with Pierce last week,
or? Okay.
and they just informed us this week that Cummins was doing a 13% increase across all their motors, so that,
Right.
I don't know if there's really a good way to predict
Okay.
where we go from here, but I think, talking with the salesman next week, I would say 900 to 950 is probably a good
Yeah.
price.
All right, I'll work with you, see what we can make sure that we can get you on the right path.
Sounds good. I
Thank you.
appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next was the budget discussion, which we just finished up. Was there anything else that we needed to do? tonight?
Unless the board had any questions between what we just ended, but again, you will just see a budget discussion beyond the workshop throughout the end of the year. So obviously, if we have questions or concerns, it'll just be a monthly placeholder. So there's nothing that I need to add if the board doesn't have anything.
So next is the agenda for next week's October 12th meeting.
So that was sent out to the board. If there's particular questions, Mike is here to go over everything that's going to deal with engineering and those agenda items for approval that will be based upon Technicon's review letters and input to the township. If there's something particular, our agenda is pretty small. We have our standard consent agendas, approving draft minutes, engineering reports, staff departments, and looking under new business, it's the traditional treasurer's approval of the payment of the bills, property tax penalty waiver provision, which will be included in your packet. It's a standard resolution. And then 3 through 11 really are going to be in Mike's avenue. So Mike, do you want to review 3 through 10 under new business?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Warren. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. The first plan is the Keith Orders plan. All 3 of these are minor subdivision plans, just so the board's aware. There's no new land development, there's no new earth disturbances or anything going on on any of these plans that I'm going to talk about here. Keith Orders plan is on Brandon Road, at the southeastern corner of the township. And essentially, it's a subdivision annexation plan that they're going to be basically creating a new 5-acre parcel that will have an existing dwelling on it. The residue lot will be about 18 acres, has an existing barn that will remain on it. And again, it's basically just taking land off of the one land tract and then adding it to the other comply with the RC zone district requirements. So it's a pretty straightforward review. Planning Commission looked at this at their last meeting. They recommended a conditional approval. There's only 4 comments that we had, very minor in nature. So it's fairly straightforward. We did go through 2 iterations of this plan with the engineer, kind of go over drafting issues and so forth. But it's a fairly straightforward plan and we'll be ready for your motion at their meeting next week. So did you have any questions regarding the Arbors plan? Okay. The second one would be the Oakman, Bill and Marlene Oakman minor plan. This is one that was discussed briefly at a past planning commission meeting. I believe it had some easements on it that was related to the county. And they were explaining that they had to go through a minor subdivision process. The idea is they're going to subdivide along the center line of Talbottville Road. They're going to convey one parcel to one daughter and one parcel to the other daughter. So they're essentially combining some extraneous adjacent pieces that are next to one of the tracks to create 2 new lots, one of which is already developed and the other is vacant. Again, no land development or services are proposed. It's a fairly simple proposal. We did a review and there was a one waiver for the plan size. The plan that was submitted from their engineer was slightly larger than what is allowed in our ordinance. But again, it was to fit the entire track on one sheet was the intent behind that. So Planning Commission recommended approval of that waiver and also conditional approval of the plan, provided they meet all the comments in our review letter, which are fairly minor in nature again. So do you have any questions related to the open proposal? Again, fairly straightforward.
No.
Okay. Last but not least, the Gary McEwen line subdivision plan. This is located on the other side of the mountain. It's in the Morgantown Industrial. A lot of you are familiar with that, South Twin Valley Road. He's proposing to subdivide a tract of land into 2 parcels and essentially follow the zoning district boundary to create 1 lot that's in the industrial district. I'm just trying to get my review letter up here. Give me 1 second. Again, this is not there's no land development proposed with this, but they're proposing between the mixed-use residential zoning and also the business industrial district to create 2 new lots, 20-acre parcel and the remaining approximately 7 acres. Again, no development is proposed. There will be notes added to the plan. The 1 lot for industrial will have to go through a future land development at some point. We don't know what kind of uses are being proposed at this point, but down the road they would have to go through land development and comply with all the ordinances at that point, going through the standard landscaping and all those road improvements and so forth, stormwater at that point. So they're not proposing anything at this time. Again, the Planning Commission recommended conditional final plan approval provided those comments on that. So does the board have any questions related to that?
No.
Okay. Number 7 is the Horace Home, 48 Talbottville Road. This is a proposal for an echo housing. We had talked a little bit about this last month. If you recall, they needed zoning relief for the echo. They did a stormwater plan for the new echo unit on the property. They're requesting a waiver of stormwater management in the form of meeting our 10-year post to 2-year pre-requirement, which is a subdivision typically associated with new subdivision criteria. It does meet storm for storm, which is a typical requirement of our stormwater ordinance. It does not meet the requirements of the saldo, however. So they are requesting a waiver of that 10-2 requirement to utilize an on-lot rain garden that would be sized to accommodate the flows associated with the new echo unit. It is a developed lot. We don't have any objections to that waiver, again, because it's an existing lot of record, and it is for an echo unit. It is not a brand new land development or something like that. It's for a similar use. So I can answer any questions that the supervisors have any for that waiver request.
No.
Okay. The last 3, and again, I can go through these in any detail you like. They are release requests, similar to what you've seen over the past several months. phases 2 and 3, and also for Honeybrook Estates. The improvements associated with those are basically the stormwater piping for Chestnut Ridge, and for Honeybrook Estates, this is the recent curving and paving that they did, the interior of the street that you saw, probably back in July and August. That work was done, and they're asking for release of that money at this point. Any other questions about any of those three?
Well, for Chestnut Ridge, it may not be directly related to that. There was some additional drainage or something that you looked at. So how's that lot out there now?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. That was a comment from our last meeting, do you remember the public comment?
Yeah.
I did meet with the homeowners over at Brook. We did go over, I actually took the plan with me, and we did walk the site on the Chestnut Ridge side because they were converting the basins over there, which is actually the reason why they were seeing more water. They were actually dewatering one of the basins over there in order to prepare that for eventual conversion into a stormwater facility. So I did address that with the contractor. He actually did inform me that he was dewatering. They actually knocked a hole in the outlet structure, which is not, you usually need permission to do that. They have to repair that after they're finished here. But everything else was gone over with the residents and explained in detail. There were no violations that were noted at that point. So it was a good educational point to go over what was on the approved plan, go over the process. And I did tell them that it is one of those things that falls under the jurisdiction of the Chester County Conservation District for the converting of the basin. So they're not actually seeing any additional water as a result of the final configuration once the basins are completed. That was a temporary issue that was associated with the dewatering.
Okay.
Was there an existing stormwater easement that already existed on the property prior to any development?
There was, Tracy, there's an area down below there that has an actual drainage way that actually goes through a culvert and eventually goes down toward Kukla Road. So that area, while it may be expanding, it is possible that the area that was wet maybe 20 years ago is possibly minimally expanding, but it is an area that was found by an easement and noted on the plans that were done back in the 90s.
Okay, so you made sure to show them that on the plan that you had available on the lot?
Yeah, I took a picture of that and put that along. We discussed that a little bit and went over what those requirements were at that point in time. And obviously our regulations have come, they've come further since the 90s and expanded a little bit. But there were no issues, like I said, related to this, the Chestnut Ridge development.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have, unless the board has questions.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Do you need Mike to stick around, or you're okay with him to do that?
Yeah.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
Mike.
we'll see you next week. Take
Yes.
care.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's really the end of the agenda for next week.
Correct, unless there's something else.
You bring the Brandywine Hospital, you bring that every week.
So that's just gonna be continuing old business. At this point, there has been no movement that I am aware of, so it's just still pending some type of movement.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the next item, which is the Environmental Advisory Committee.
So would you like me to lead, or do you want to start, John? I mean, I can.
You want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So at our last board meetings, John brought up the idea of the Environmental Action Committee, and from what I heard from the board is that we were interested in exploring what other municipalities are doing in our area to see if that would be a board that could provide some insight and helpfulness to our township as we're growing, right? So John volunteered to do a lot of the research, a lot of the heavy lifting, looking at several ordinances, and again, they're all over the country, and start working this towards a very brief ordinance draft, which he did submit to me earlier this week. With our budget process, I apologize, John, I only got a chance to look at it today.
Yeah.
So what I just provided the board with before this meeting was just a markup copy of my notes, of things that I believe as a manager I would need some more explanation, or suggestion back to John that maybe some more information needs to be included as associated documents to kind of help me as a manager wrap my head around what's being requested, best practice, and just bring that back to the board for further discussion. So I can either go through my comments, or since I just gave it to everyone, if you just want to take these comments back with you, review them. This would give the board a chance to provide their own comments back to me, so I could then potentially put them in a larger document to bring back in a follow-up meeting. Say, these are the concerns, these are what's been addressed, these are outstanding, and start that as a discussion point. So I will leave it up to the board to decide what type of discussion we'd like tonight.
Yeah, just for clarification, this came from Harrisburg, one of these templates for an ordinance specifically for environmental advisory committee. So the only addition that I'm putting in there was to say that to get this thing moving along, that I would work in a capacity as an advisor just to get to help get this thing moving along. So then if that capacity is still needed in year 2, that I call that consultant. Where that got that from, some municipalities do have a environmental consultant, if that's something that we feel is necessary going on, ongoing. But the ordinance itself is pretty straightforward, and from my research, it said to create an EAC, you do have to do it by ordinance.
That is best
discussed it
practice.
with resolution, but yeah, it is required to do it by ordinance.
I personally think that there's so many comments that need to be addressed, and this is the end of the year that the budget is being worked on right now,
Yeah.
that I think we should table all of this until we can fully look at it and address.
Well, there's no
I don't
budget
know how many
items.
comments there is, but
There's no budget items on this. It's,
Well, so I guess that's one of the questions I have, is a consultant, it's showing that it's a paid position.
in year 2.
Correct. And so the point of the 5-year build-out, though, is I need associated costs.
Okay.
And while, you know, some towns, so like Euclid has a budget for their AC, it's $3,000, but those are things that I guess I need as manager clarity on. As Paul was stating that, you know, our 2023 budget isn't going to be in a vacuum anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be, you know, if we forecast funds for 2024, while we have a healthy fund balance now, that helps the board, you know, that was my ask of the board with the budget is, I need your short, medium, long-term goals, because what we're gonna do in 5 years is really gonna affect, you know, potentially what I'm gonna budget or recommend to the board this year, if we need to start saving up for the following year, or start breaking out some funds, or, you know, funding another project. And I guess, just to the extent as it might give the board some information is, Section 4 kind of puts that all ordinances inconsistent with the above provisions are repealed to the extent of their inconsistencies. The concern is that we just don't know what we don't know. So we don't know if any other ordinance is going to fall because of the implementation of this. And that could really cause a domino effect. So if something in this ordinance counters something in our saldo, then we're looking at, you know, this potential pitfall of, you know, a large ordinance, you know, most ordinances are attached to others, right? So
Yeah.
if one is affected, so the point being is that, you know, to ensure that nothing is being repealed, because we just don't know what's out there to counter into what's that, it's gonna take some, cost and financial time management. So we're gonna have to have someone review our ordinance top to bottom and see if there's something that could potentially have a pitfall here. So just for this year, that's gonna be an associated cost to have our solicitor involved. And again, depending on who's going to tackle that, right? If it's the administration, then the board has to decide where you wanna me to spend my time this year. We are working on our budget, we're working on our 5-year build out. We're closing out our public works liquid fuels project. As you know, we had an issue with liquid fuels on my start. So our liquid fuels PennDOT advisor essentially says we can make no mistakes. And again, it's the recourse is significant for making a hiccup. So I can do whatever the board wants me to do. I just need some direction from the board in general.
Will this also be, will we be soliciting comments from other, planning commission? I mean, will anybody, because this could affect other.
This is gonna affect
Plus,
everything.
it's an advisory, it's not any position we're making, this committee's not going to make any decisions. It's like any other standing committee. As you heard in the town hall meeting, that decisions are made by the board of supervisors, not by the committees. What we're seeing right now with development, some of the areas, some of the unknowns, that this would help, the board of supervisor point out some things. You would assign this EAC to look into it further, to help us ensure that we're meeting all where we're looking. We have not overlooked any of the environmental concerns. There's also the assistance that we can get from the Northern Chester County EAC group. So they have reached out to us and said they would love to have us participate with them. There's about well over a dozen municipalities. They are well established. So and then there again, that's one of the reasons why I was putting in the thing about the advisor and stuff. And we could pull that and rely on the help from that association. They can provide us with some of those professional guidelines that we don't have immediately. So the reason I put that in there was that I was going to work in that capacity to help guide this thing in its first year.
And then in the second year, whoever that is drawing salary or getting
Well,
paid.
that would be the thing. Do we want to make it paid? Is it a volunteer? I mean, that's some municipalities, I believe Valley Township as an example, has a minimal, consultant fee.
So I just have a question.
Sure.
If you're drawing up and voting on a board that you're gonna sit on and then potentially get paid,
No, I'm not getting paid. That's the thing it said. In the
Second
first
year.
year. Yeah, in the
Second year.
Yeah.
that's what it says, right?
In the second year.
So then the
that would
second
be-
year, anybody would potentially get paid, which
Mhm.
is that,
But it's up to the board. They would take, put out for applications,
request for proposal, or are we having any kind of?
So I guess that's the question I had, is the consultant, it's not clear to me, does the advisor automatically become the consultant?
No.
Okay, and that's one of the things where it says, in year the position comes from advisor to consultant, but it doesn't really make it clear.
Look, clarify that point, yeah.
And again,
Two different people
and that's why you'll
involved.
see the comments saying that we need the definitions,
Yeah,
any successful ordinance needs a really succinct definition
Yeah.
to kind of
okay.
give as an associated document, right? So,
Right,
going back to,
That's how this reads here.
Mhm.
There will be an environmental advisor in year one, which will become environmental consultant in year two,
So the
and
word,
thereafter. So that sounds like that same person.
It's just gonna go
Okay.
matriculate to the next.
which could then
thing,
become
and
ethical considered.
Yeah.
And
So that's
again,
the-
John, I understand this is a draft,
Right.
yeah,
and hence my reason for the comments is just to say, the devil's in the detail, right? So we
Right.
need the clarity
Right.
to
Yeah.
ensure, and as Laura said, number 7, under committees and compensation 17703, the concern is, do we put this out to other boards that says review subdivision of land development plans as appropriate in coordination with the planning commission? So Laura's point of view is it will affect planning, And does planning have, should they have a review to say whether they believe
It's
BAC
necessary.
is necessary, right, or not? So I guess that's more to Laura's point is,
It also has overlap, I think, in land preservation and even
well,
parks and rec.
the appropriation, right, if acquisition of property falls under park and rec, land preservation, and the board of supervisors in general, right? The board ultimately is gonna decide
Yeah, it's,
the acquisition of property. And again, John, this is just me saying,
Well,
that's where clarity really is going to help establish those rules, and that's why my comment to you is, does everyone want to go with their comments? And then, again, I can't tell you whether to table it or not, but I guess my point is, these discussions going forward, this rough draft is just that draft, and that I think, once you go through the iteration that there's some consensus that this looks like something that we could work with, then the question is, does that start going out to the various boards for review before we start sending this out to our solicitor? We want to make sure that the core concept is essentially agreed upon. I don't want to send that out to solicitor review now, and then this looks completely different in 2 months. And then we're resending it back out to legal, 5 times, I'd much rather.
Yeah, I want to do one shot with the solicitor. Yeah.
Correct, so I just don't know whether you want me to, I think my comments are clear, but as always, my point is, these are my comments, and I'm sure everybody on the board has other comments, and I think if we have the opportunity to see those answered, they may lead to more, or that might make us understand the process a little bit better, which will, John, ultimately move, I think, the process a little bit quicker, but I think this is a great start. It's just that, like I said, definitions needed to be here. We need the confirmation, because, again, when you're talking consultant, you clearly know that we should be RFPs,
Yeah.
right? Making sure that we're getting a consultant out, and, what is the background that we require of our consultant. And ultimately, typically, consultants are approved by the board, right, for various other committees. And again, that was my concern, is that should it be worded that should the board believe a consultant needs to be, put on board for a certain project, that the board can make that decision. Again, if there's things that running through something pretty quickly, because I know you're passionate about it, John.
Well, yeah, the thing is, we're just going to get moving on since we have some issues coming up now.
Absolutely.
I can get some clarification.
I'm also worried that right now we happen to have sort of, rather than a group of residents from across the spectrum of our residents, we happen to have a group of particular residents that happen to have one particular opinion. So it's not really a broad perspective and representation of our township residents. I think in this document,
Yeah.
you put a list of your proposed
Yeah.
board members and yourself included. of
Well,
course.
this is the problem, there was 2 documents. This was the initial mock-up, and then as you see the table on the one page, and I start throwing some names as, potential, then the copy that should have gone to Warren, which I did send to a separate email attachment, was just the 2 pages for the ordinance. So I'm throwing out some names there, but there would be a process, what we do every year, in our reorg, who would get approval by the board.
Well, and I also remember in the past when we had some issues where we had some conflicting ordinances in regard to, what was it, dead animal recovery and dog ordinances. I think that there's a lot of conflict here with what's in our existing ordinances. And then to have a legal review of all of our existing ordinances as compared to how this reads. I don't know how much that would cost, but I think it would probably be pretty expensive.
I don't know if this is a
And I'm
normal
not sure
practice
what warrants
for,
that cost.
well, this is normal practice for about half the municipalities in Chester County right now. And I can look into, some of those issues that you raised, because as I said, we do have an advisory group that can provide us with their, experiences, what they did to get this moving along. And, we just give them the second rep and take it from there.
I think it's, I appreciate that maybe half of the municipalities in Chester County have a board similar to this, but I think that we also have to compare what our annual budget is, what our population is, how our township's made up of agricultural areas. I think we have to look more in a similar comparison than maybe a municipality that's,
Do you think this would have
A
a
lot different
significant
than us.
financial impact on us?
do I think this would?
Yeah.
As it's written now, yes.
Wow. How would that be significant?
You don't-
You lost me. on
What
that.
do you don't think a review of all of our existing ordinances as compared to this and how it fits in legally would be cost prohibitive?
Well, we didn't have any problem when we took the resolution that created the Land Preservation Committee and then built that into an ordinance, because that was the recommendation from Chris Hartman a few years ago. And we could look up the cost of what that took for his review.
The Land Preservation Committee existed. I'm not
Yes.
sure what you're saying.
That we did a ordinance because we adopted the Land Preservation Committee with an ordinance. Then our solicitors recommended that as a committee, you should have an ordinance. So even though the committee already existed, we did the review based on the same process that we're talking about, wrote the ordinance, and, this is the same
I'm not sure
process.
that that's a fair comparison. That existed. This is
Does
not.
Land Pres have that section where it?
Well, we'd have to check the.
And I think that's the crux of it. If this ordinance doesn't have a stipulation that it's gonna start striking down inconsistent ordinances with an EAC, and again, like you said, we're trying to push it through quickly,
Well,
so without dotting our i's or t's,
yeah.
that section 4 really is
Mhm.
going to be burdensome.
Okay.
Because, again, our ordinances are, they're tied to each other.
Yeah.
So if someone says, well, nope, this says clearly it goes against Saldo somehow, then our Saldo falls. And if our Saldo falls, then it's the Wild West again.
Yeah.
And again, it might be seeing whether section 4 is required, John.
Yeah,
It's
that's-
that simple. But that's one of those concerns that I think is an important matter now. How essential is section 4 to you as it relates to the overall formation of the EAC? And
Okay.
if that's not a deal breaker, or,
Yeah.
right, something that's critical, right? And again, I was trying to search up the Land Preservation Committee. I would doubt that the Land Preservation Committee has that same type of stipulation, that if there's something inconsistent with another ordinance, it strikes that down.
Yeah. As far as the extent of that powers and stuff, no, I know that's not the case with the land preservation. This one, section, we, can come back to and address that. As I said, it came from a template. I have other samples from other municipalities of what they adopted, and, I can compare it to that.
As it's written, it's pretty broad reaching, and I think we should have the input and buy-in and comments from other boards. and
Yeah,
people
That
involved
would
in
be,
the
go to planning and, like press, and, certainly,
And even Parks and Rec,
certainly,
because it touches all that.
yeah.
Yeah, Euclid's is about 2 pages, and it has
Yeah.
10 portions of it.
So, yeah, the one with Valley Township, that was adopted many years ago, and then the same thing with West Vincent, they didn't even follow the, what Harrisburg provided, so maybe I should have gone with what the other municipalities adopted, rather than go with this template. All right, so, I'll look at your comments, and I can forward this, and then, give it another shot.
Again, like, I'd be happy, like, my wife just sent me Euclid Township's one,
Yeah.
and sometimes simple is better, right? The
Yeah.
reality is that I think if you want to move something forward, right, you do simplicity, right? If the boards in the future think that more services or needs should be rendered, or that any board or committee should have more responsibilities. It's a very simple matter, but I think if you are overcomplicating something that we wish to get started, they're literally having, you know, their bylaws, the council needs to adopt bylaws with approval of the board of supervisors.
Right.
Compensation, it's one sentence, no compensation for their services, but maybe you're reimbursed for expenses actually necessarily incurred in the performance of their duties.
Okay.
And I thought when we initially talked about even just looking into it or even considering it whatsoever, it was only by request of the supervisors for one specific project. This has a monthly.
Well, section 4 does expand considerably, so we can have the wording that will suit the needs for our member township.
All right, so
We'll have to
gathering, we're gonna, you'll,
be right.
we,
I don't even know that we have, do you have time to sort of put any more time and attention and energy into this?
So if the,
Before the end of
so,
this year?
so if the board wishes to give me comments, and again, you know, if John is continuing to do the heavy lifting, ultimately, again, it's easy for John to give me some documents and for me to have Christie upload it. I think if John can say like, this is consistent with X, Y, and Z local, you know, they get the board running, they have, you know, it's a 2-page document that really is just, you know, what I can see. You know, it's hard, but it's relatively simple, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at this potentially affecting legally other ordinances, then I would need direction from the board,
Okay.
right? So it's just simple, saying, we're here at the Board of Supervisors to look at environmental issues, there's no compensation, you make an annual report, you meet as, you know, the board believes you need to be met, then I think it's a very simple process. Then you just have to work on the selection portion of it.
I'll do that, because one of the things we could do is just pull out what the purpose of some of these sections are, and that's pretty simple.
And have legal definitions for all of the
Yeah.
gray areas.
Well, we do have sample from other
And
municipalities.
you know, make it a little bit less broad,
Well,
and monthly meetings and compensation.
well, I thought it would be
And
helpful
have
with,
some more input from the
what
other
is it?
supervisors.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it would be unfair to you to make you, have you draw up the whole ordinance, so you think we should talk about it as a board of supervisors.
Well, that's the first thing we're presenting it as a follow-up since the last discussion. So the advice or the request that I got, if I could put together a simple an ordinance, and you know, my choice of picking the template was probably not the best choice.
so then we'll look for revised.
Yes.
Okay. And
Give
then
it
what
a
about
shot.
in Warren's time going forward till the end of the year?
Well, you have to let us know if he has the time to review it or not. And if he can't, then that takes care of that.
And I'll obviously take a look at something that's a simple ordinance. And again, really my input is, I'm gonna look at it as a professional manager and say, if it doesn't affect budgetary issues for me, then really it's out of my wheelhouse. You know, my concerns of this in my comments were more directed at me seeing there's gonna be a financial portion of it. And then I just, as a manager, have to kind of have an understanding. But if you believe that it's easier coming back and it's clearly saying there's no compensation, you know, we're looking for, you know, like what a township does of a few $1,000s to do promotional materials, or, you know, reimburse someone for going for a training to learn how to use rain gardens efficiently. Oh, okay, well, that's an easy ask for, you know, coming back and saying, can we have a $3,000 a year budget to work on projects?
Yeah.
With the understanding that obviously if other opportunities arise, we have made resolutions to fund different line items with unallocated funds, so that's not, you know, out of the realm of, you know, that's an easy ask.
Yeah.
But again, I think if we complicate this resolution, I won't have time, but if you come from something simple, I give you my honest feedback, and then it goes back into the wheelhouse of the board. Right, so if there's a financial portion to it, I would say my time would be limited, but if there's really really no financial aspect to it, other than maybe, you know, telling Paul and I that we'd like to see us throw a line item budget for a few $1,000s. You know, that is a 5-minute conversation, if that gives you the board some guidance.
That looks like, that's it. Is there anybody else in the audience that has any comments on anything?
Yeah, I do. What the residents want in Honeybrook is their backs. We want his committee to have safety and environmental impacts for the whole community, not over there, but as a whole. So we need something to where people are gonna be alerted. The whole community, not only me that's 700 feet down there, about that other development down there. That was kind of a shady deal that people put through because of your ordinances. That's where we're coming from. And I heard today, another township over that way tried to shove through a back door of a certain environmental company putting in a great big retention, whatever, for all this waste. Then the residents found out about it, and now they're hot, and they're pushing back. We don't want that happening here. We want to work together with the township, but we also need work from you guys. As a whole. Not everybody, no, everybody is about the big bucks. Well, that's fine, but you have to have safety, and you have to have other things in place.
I'm trying to understand your comments, what do you mean?
Well, I'm understanding your comments too. Everybody's jamming stuff in here, and they're not looking at wastewater on the road, updating the road, and the facilities. That's what we're getting at. I had a call today that my buddy was down in Chester County Emergency Room for 10 hours. 10 hours. There was one guy in there that got attacked by a dog with both arms taped and bleeding all over the ER. He was there for 7 hours. That's unacceptable. You're putting in all this stuff and it's not safe across the whole county. And you have now a possible recession coming up. There's a lot of bad stuff that's going on outside that we're not being told about. Not by
Trying to
you
keep
people,
focused on
but
what we
by the
actually have
media.
control over, and what we
No,
actually.
I know that, but guess what?
influence
Somebody
over,
better start doing
and
a
what
lot
we
more
actually
homework before certain
Are in
things come
charge
in
of
here.
here, not what happens if, you
That's
know,
what I'm
that's
saying.
unfortunate, but we don't have any,
Well,
we can't.
well, apparently we don't have control over certain things either, but we should have say because we're taxpayers.
Well, that's why we have meetings, like
Yeah.
here right now.
But apparently, we're going to push back for his new committee.
It's not pushback, we're just asking for some more information.
Well, there's clearly some concern about people being on this committee, and I don't know who everybody is that John proposed, but obviously there's some people that are concerned about the D.R. Horton development. You cannot, or you should not discount any of those people, because a number of them do have an environmental biology background. Number of them are highly educated people that would be a huge asset.
I think what we're forgetting is history. I think what we're forgetting is when we make a new board or committee, and then they have overreaching powers by this ordinance, or a proposed ordinance, to change the zoning, and it affects other areas like Southville, permits, land development. It all has to work together. You can't just say, well, this is.
But that's a
this is
different
what I
story.
want.
You have-
That's a whole different story.
That's a different story. That was.
That's what we're
Warren-
talking about.
But that's
we
what
just
Warren
talked
was
about.
addressing. When you make a comment of, it seems like there's certain people on there that all have a skewed vision.
Do you
It's-
think as a board, though, that one of us should be able to pick who's on a committee?
No.
No,
very-
no, it should be
He
separate.
Neither
didn't
do I.
say that he was.
He has a list of the potential
The
members.
reason I put a
But
list
these
there
are
is
people
because
that are
I
going
was
to
asked,
submit the rest
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, one of the concerns was, Rich, too, well, do we think we have enough people to form a committee? So I threw out, 5 names or 6 names and said, there's some people who have already expressed an interest based on what they heard. So I threw some names in there and said, yeah, we could form a committee, because we did run into a problem a few years ago with parks. We had 3 people show up, we needed 5. But I think this time around, we would have an opportunity to pick and choose, from, people submitting names.
I think this needs to be fully vetted before we just throw out an ordinance.
Oh, no, we understand that. We have to have more meetings on how you're gonna form it and what basis you have.
Yeah.
And everybody's thinking, everybody's about the power. You gotta cut that crap out.
What are you talking about, Bill?
Well, you're saying about the power. It's like, no, it's not. It's about safety, and it's about all the stuff that's going on that affects everybody's lives here. That's what we're saying. We don't want Exton to come out here. You wanna go live in Exton, go live in Exton. This is farming and agriculture a lot here. You're not gonna bring any mega plants out here. You're not. It's not gonna work like that. It doesn't work like that now.
But I think there are some people that I know have spoken to John that have a huge interest in environmental issues and have the education and background who could contribute. So-
We've never put people on these committees, whether it be planning or parks or anything, without requesting either a resume or a biographical sketch, what education, what interest and all that. That's always been a part of our process.
But the way that this document is worded, this new
It
committee.
needs help, yes, it needs help.
This
We
new
know that.
committee would basically potentially overrule other committees. And the role that you put yourself into would basically have the power of the board over other committees and boards and people, the way that it reads now. This needs to
Yeah.
be completely redone.
It's good.
And none of us individually should create a board, in my
No.
opinion.
I don't think you.
We
I'm
only
not saying that.
have our own input on it, then pay ourselves in year 2. I don't think, I
Would you
would,
say we too with payment?
or I don't
Okay.
think she would do that.
You have new developments coming in here, okay? Let them pay some of the charges. Have some damn charges on
No,
it.
you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm
Well,
saying
you don't understand
that you
what we're
don't create
saying.
a board and then in the second year, pay yourself. I wouldn't be part of creating a board that I would appoint myself to and then pay myself in year 2.
Well, I'm not saying pay.
That's
I'm
not
not
okay.
saying that.
No,
We're not saying that.
Well, that's what this says.
Well, we could have worded it that from day one, there's a paid consultant. But I was saying in the first year,
That's what this
to have
document
an advisor that would be unpaid, okay?
says. In year 2, it says they're getting paid.
Yes.
As
because
this
that's
is
based
worded,
on-
Well, someone would.
That is what some municipalities
Well-
have done.
Someone right now is listed as John.
What's that?
No, but I think he realizes that wording has to change.
And that's just the whole point.
And
of
it's
this
just a rough
conversation.
draft.
No one is saying this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My point of view as a manager is that if there's a financial
Yeah.
ask on it, I have to look into it, we
Yeah.
have answers. And that's all we're saying here. No one is shooting down anything. My comments address the concern of the financial aspect of it. No one is saying no to this board.
Right.
We're just saying what we were presented with today, we need more information. John acknowledges.
Yeah, but then she's bringing up, oh, that's gonna affect this and this and this and this.
It is.
Good, it may. That's maybe what we need, is an update on these
Yes.
outdated.
You cannot have an advisory council knock down ordinances. They're an advisory council that provides
But they can
recommendations.
advise you, they don't have to
The
knock them
way
down.
this ordinance is written,
The stat, yeah.
and again, unfortunately, it's,
Right.
the way that it
It's like a
is
double-edged
worded.
sword, what are you gonna do?
There are answers. You remove the ability to make any other ordinance that doesn't align with this automatically fall down. But as what was provided to us today, that's how it's worded. So again, you're getting to thinking that we don't want this. The point is, if I need to pay our solicitor to go through our ordinance book to make sure there's nothing that is counterintuitive to this, that is a large financial expense. That a layperson who does not have a legal degree, nor I, is qualified to determine. So by either removing or adjusting one sentence, it really removes a financial burden that I am responsible for to the taxpayers.
And we're responsible for it too, because we're supposed to spend taxpayer money like it's coming out of our own pocket.
So,
That's what I feel.
so no one here is saying no. We're saying what was presented to us has concerns. And that if we want to push it through quickly, my concerns about the financial aspect of it has to be addressed, because my goal is to respond to the board who reports to the, governs for the people. And I would be remiss if I said, that's not my, it's a board, I don't have anything to do with it. I have everything to do with the financial well-being of this township, as you both sat through. And just because somebody goes, oh, it's 20 grand, okay, well, when we start going down that path, at what point, oh, it's only 200,000, you have 4 million, it's only 1 million. At what point is there saying,
Listen, I've been here since '84, my taxes have gone up like umpteen times. You don't have to go there, but here's the deal. When we have exploding things going on out there, fuel, food, and everything like that, it's called either living within your budget or you're cutting. Every time, every year, everything keeps going up tax-wise.
Well, that's what he's saying, he wants to.
Yeah, I mean,
and
seriously.
that's all I'm trying to tell you is that is my job.
Yeah, but you're only one person. I understand that.
And here's the thing, what I will tell you,
Yeah.
I am not a supervisor. I do not own the decisions that this board makes, but they pay me to give them professional, unbiased, unpolitically motivated information. And that is my goal. That's why I came here. I told you my letter of engagement. It's land pres. That's what I lived in the borough 20 years ago. I moved to Exton because I couldn't get home as a police officer. So I live in an area that I truly don't want to be in.
Yeah, I hear you.
So listen, guess where I work, where I want to live.
Yeah, no.
Guess where I live, where I used to work and
Right.
don't want to live there.
Yeah, yeah.
So you don't have to sell me,
Yeah.
like I find it enjoyable coming home.
Yeah,
Coming
because
to work.
it's coming this way.
Yeah, I'm coming this way.
Right.
But when I'm home, I don't like going out because it takes me a million times longer to get anywhere. So I don't think anybody
Well,
wants to come out.
that's why we're speaking up to say, we don't want that out here.
And we
We
understand
don't
that.
want to have it down in town.
And we
don't wanna
understand
have
that.
extent.
But you also.
And I understand your point.
And here's the struggle that people have to, maybe don't comprehend. The Commonwealth made municipalities. The Commonwealth, through their code, tells us what we can and can't do. And people sometimes think that as a government agency, we can make our own rules up. The largest thing we
No,
can do is, I
we
know you
understand
do,
that.
I know you do, some people do not. So when I first showed up and somebody goes, a moratorium on building, it's it's explicitly prohibited. And I said, well, we're not allowed to do that legally.
Not allowed.
And they go, I don't care, it's wrong. I go, well, great, that's a great opinion, but
We don't mind building as long as it's safe and you don't mess up.
understood. And
That's all.
Right, and I will tell you that no
That's all.
township has made its ordinance from scratch. These have been through the
They
legal
grow-
process.
Yeah.
They grow over time
Right.
with uniform construction codes, with ordinances that have been brought up, have been gone through the court system. So Honeybrook's ordinance looks pretty close to all other municipalities, right? State standards.
Standards.
Correct. And while I would love to say,
But we're just focused on safety. I didn't want to hear that guy, that bitch, that he was down there in Chester County for 10 hours.
And listen.
But he said, you got Brandywine and Jennifer, where else are these people gonna go? He says, you don't wanna go to Paoli because you're gonna die on the road because of the traffic.
there are concerns.
So we're like, we're.
And so the point is, like,
we're
we've put our support to our commissioners. I've spoken to the state representatives,
Right.
and that's the extent of what a township can do.
Yeah, I know. You
Right,
go
but
so
when
far.
someone comes to a meeting and says, can't you buy it? Can't townships, well, you shake your head no, but the person
Yeah,
behind you
because-
said,
See, but, yeah,
but how do you
Wait a second, yeah, just, it went from a comment, and now it's getting,
Right. Point being,
obviously,
we are a public meeting.
yeah.
I don't want you to leave here thinking that this board is not interested in this, as it's written, we need to review it and revisit it
I
and come
agree
back
with
with
that.
comments.
I wholeheartedly
So,
agree with that.
but I don't want you leaving saying that anyone is saying like, no, thank you. It's just that
Right.
what was presented to us does not give us the information we need to move forward.
Right,
And
okay.
that John has agreed that this draft needs revision.
Yeah, it needs
Because-
tweaking.
Here's the
But at
thing,
least it's the first step.
it is,
It's
but
the first step.
I'm the professional manager, so my
Yeah.
thought process is different than the board's.
But see, what you have to do here is make people feel comfortable on decisions, not just jammed.
And nothing is, but that's why we say like the workshops
There was a
are.
lot of, I'll tell you what, were you here for that Rockland Station crap?
No, I came in December.
Well, I was here. You should have seen 600, they were 600 people down that elementary school, and people were pissed. Because they wanted to jam through that whole thing, and it was garbage. We
And
knew it was
again, like,
garbage.
all I can tell you is that our meetings are
It was
open.
garbage,
Our meetings are open.
yeah.
And my point is, our conversation we're having now is a conversation I'd love to have after the meeting.
I know, I don't want to
And I
tie up
keep-
anymore. I don't want to tie up anymore.
You're not, but my point is, this is a conversation I'd love to have with
Right.
you.
And we're having a civil conversation, and I like that. I don't
Appreciate
like
it.
that.
I've told you before, I want to see this meeting room filled
Yeah.
with people
Yeah,
that want to
how
learn
many
and
people
listen.
showed up tonight?
Well,
It's
maybe
really
they heard enough, not heard enough, but they got their fill last night, that they feel that their concerns were addressed. And again, I have no doubt that next week,
Can I just ask one thing, at this point, it is getting late.
Yeah.
Gary, did you have any comment? Okay,
so,
all right, just want to make sure, Gary.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And just so you
Very-
don't want,
Yeah.
in case you're curious, I don't live next to either. But we legally cannot say, no more building. We can't do that.
No,
We can't
I
wave
understand
a
that.
magic wand.
Yeah, I
Cannot do
understand,
that.
I understand where you're going, but we still have to have safety, and we have to have other issues addressed.
And that's all built into our
That's all.
saldo. And that's all built into our saldo.
Yeah.
Correct.
Our subdivision and land development ordinance, I'm sorry, I keep saying acronyms, but there is a subdivision and land development ordinance that encompasses your concerns.
It does.
It truly is a comprehensive document that has been generated over years and years and years of litigation, reviews, appeals, and limiting the power of government or giving us power.
Right.
So the saldo is our core ability to provide health, safety, and welfare along with our zoning.
Yeah, exactly, that's all.
But there is a Commonwealth process. Okay, so that's all I'm trying to say, is that we have processes in place, and those processes play out in public, in planning, in zoning hearings, in park and rec, and land presidents, board of supervisors meetings. Everything's done in the open.
Yeah, it's not like we're hiding in the back room talking about it. We're not.
Legally, there's like 3 or 4 ways we can have an executive session about lawsuits, acquisition of lands, and employment. That's it. Everything else is here, right? So, do you
No, that's
guys want
fine,
to throw
I'm sorry for tying you
No,
up.
you're not. You don't apologize.
All right, I guess we need a
Motion? Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Or, I don't even know what time we started.
Okay.
All right,
I
thank
think
you.
you start 7:05, that's a good shot, right?
No, we were in our budget workshop.
Oh,
That's
that's
the time.
About 7:25.
That's-
7:25.